NASA admits they lost the original high-definition tapes of the moon landing. They also lost the technology that got us there. That's the official story, the equivalent of building the Great Pyramid and then forgetting how to stack stones. For the next several minutes, I'm going to show you the documented, unsettling evidence that makes the official stories for 10 of our most ridiculous beliefs fall apart. What I've found will make you question everything you thought was real. Birds aren't real. Everyone laughs at this one. The idea of birds as government drones is the poster child for absurd conspiracies. It began as a Gen Z satire movement, a parody of paranoid thinking. It's obviously a joke, a meme designed to mock people who question authority. But here's where my blood ran cold. The joke has an uncomfortable basis in reality. The US government has been developing bird-like surveillance drones since the 1970s. The CIA's Insectothopter program created robotic dragonflies decades ago. More recently, DARPA's Hummingbird drone is a technological marvel, indistinguishable from the real thing. It hovers, darts, and lands, all while recording high-definition video. If you wanted a ubiquitous surveillance network, would you install obvious street cameras that people avoid? Or would you hide it in something so common it can perch outside any window in the world unsuspected? Then there are the events the official narrative can't explain. The mass bird die-offs, like in The Hague in 2018, where hundreds of starlings fell from the sky during a 5G network test. The official cause remains unknown. Real birds exhibit bizarre behavior near cell towers, flying in perfect geometric patterns as if responding to a signal. And then there's the simple engineering problem: birds sitting on power lines carrying thousands of volts. The biological explanation involves a lack of potential difference across their feet, but this requires near-perfect insulation and conductivity control, a marvel of organic engineering or a clue to deliberate design. The US Patent Office holds dozens of patents for avian-mimicking surveillance technology. These aren't vague concepts. They are detailed blueprints for turning the sky into a listening device. What if the joke isn't that birds are drones? What if the real joke is on us, for being trained to laugh at the idea so we never look closer? But if they can hide a surveillance network in plain sight, what happens when they broadcast a deception to the entire world? The moon landing was staged. The conspiracy theory that refuses to die despite decades of debunking. We've all seen the grainy footage: Neil Armstrong's step, Buzz Aldrin's salute. To question humanity's greatest achievement is to brand yourself a fool. But here's what made me lose sleep. NASA themselves admit they lost the original, high-quality tapes of the Apollo 11 moonwalk. They were accidentally erased. They also claim we can't get back to the moon because the Saturn V rocket technology was destroyed. We have supercomputers in our pockets with more processing power than all of NASA had in 1969. Yet a return journey is somehow harder now. It's like claiming you built a Ferrari 50 years ago, then losing the car and the blueprints and insisting you can't build another because you only have access to a modern factory. Then there's the Van Allen radiation belt, a lethal field of radiation surrounding the Earth. NASA's current Artemis program lists this radiation as a major unsolved obstacle. Yet, they claim Apollo astronauts, protected by a thin layer of aluminum, passed through it so quickly it didn't matter. Furthermore, the camera's crosshairs, which are etched onto the lens, inexplicably appear behind objects in some photos, a physical impossibility suggesting the images were doctored. Watch the footage again. The flag waves in a vacuum, a place with no breeze. Notice the lack of stars in every photo from the lunar surface. With no atmosphere, the stars should have been brilliant. Look for the blast crater under the 17-ton lunar module. A 10,000-pound thrust engine should have created a massive crater. Instead, the module sits on pristine soil. If we went to the moon 6 times in just 3 years, why haven't we been back in over half a century? If they can fake what's far above us, could they be faking the very ground beneath our feet? Flat Earth theory. The belief that makes people angrier than any other. It's the ultimate symbol of ignorance. We have satellite photos, physics, geometry. Flat Earthers simply reject provable facts, right? But here's what's unsettling. Many proponents aren't idiots. They're engineers, commercial pilots, and former military navigators. They are technically minded people asking uncomfortable questions based on their own observations. You're told something is true your entire life. Then you look at the evidence yourself, and it doesn't match the textbook. Do you trust the authority of the book or your own senses? Basic physics dictates that water always finds its level. Oceans, covering 71% of our world, should show a noticeable curvature on a ball 25,000 miles in circumference. Yet they appear perfectly flat to the horizon. The Bedford Level experiment, replicated many times, shows no curvature over a 6-mile stretch of water. We're told ships disappear over the horizon because of the curve, yet powerful modern telescopes can bring them back into full view. Airline pilots point to flight paths like Santiago to Sydney, which make no sense on a globe, forcing planes to fly far up over North America, but are a near straight line on a flat Earth map. Here's the really uncomfortable question. Why is Antarctica protected by the International Antarctic Treaty of 1959? This treaty forbids independent, private exploration of the continent, and it's enforced by military presence. If Earth is a ball, Antarctica is just a frozen landmass. But if the Earth is a flat disk, then Antarctica is the massive ice wall containing all the world's oceans. Why are we forbidden from independently verifying the shape of our own planet? Faking the shape of the world is one thing. What if they could fake an entire country on the map? Finland doesn't exist. This conspiracy sounds like peak internet insanity until you look at the oddities it tries to explain. Finland is on the map. We know about Nokia, saunas, reindeer. Millions of people supposedly live there. This is obviously ridiculous, but here's what made my hands shake. The theory is that the landmass called Finland is actually the Baltic Sea, and the country is a generations-long conspiracy between Russia and Japan to hide illegal fishing. In the 1920s, both countries needed fish but were restricted by international laws. The solution? Create a fictional country, Finland, granting them exclusive rights to a vast, resource-rich body of water. The fish would be caught in the Finnish Sea and transported across Russia on the Trans-Siberian Railway to Japan, hidden from international oversight. Think about it. Have you ever met someone who has taken a vacation to Finland? Not a business trip to a Nokia office, but an actual holiday? The anecdotal evidence is surprisingly scarce. The data has strange gaps. Finland's population statistics, when analysed against its land area and economic output, show inconsistencies. Nokia, supposedly Finland's biggest corporate success, does its manufacturing almost everywhere except Finland. Its headquarters might be there, but the economic activity happens elsewhere. And then there's the genuinely weird linguistic anomaly, the Finnish language. It is completely unrelated to any other European language family. Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish are connected. Russian is Slavic. Finnish is a linguistic island. How does a unique language develop in isolation in the middle of a culturally interconnected Europe? If you can fake an entire country with maps, statistics, a language, and culture, what else can you fake? Faking a country is a massive financial undertaking, but what if a conspiracy is purely about money, hiding on your city's street corner? Mattress firm is money laundering. A money laundering operation hiding in plain sight. It's just a mattress store. Sure, there are too many of them, but people need mattresses. It's a boring but essential product. Nothing suspicious here. But here's what doesn't add up. Drive around any American suburb. Count the mattress firm stores. There are often 3 or 4 within a few blocks, sometimes across the street from each other, competing for the same customers. How often do you buy a mattress? Once every decade, maybe? The business model is a mathematical impossibility. With over 3,000 locations, they have more storefronts than businesses selling things people buy regularly. Walk into any mattress firm on a Tuesday, they are consistently empty, yet this company remains profitable enough to pay exorbitant commercial rent on thousands of prime locations. Here's why it works. Mattresses are perfect for money laundering. They are a high-ticket item with an absurd 400 to 1,000% markup. A mattress costing $100 can be sold for $1,000. This allows clean-looking transactions to be recorded with zero actual inventory moving. In 2017, its parent company, Steinhoff International, was embroiled in a multi-billion-dollar accounting fraud scandal. A Chapter 11 bankruptcy is designed to streamline operations, which usually means closing hundreds of unprofitable stores. Yet, Mattress Firm emerged from the process with its massive, seemingly redundant retail footprint almost entirely intact. The numbers just don't add up. How do you maintain 3,000 stores through bankruptcy selling a product people buy once a decade? Unless selling mattresses isn't the real business. It's one thing to hide dirty money. It's another to hide a fake person inside the world's most famous band. Paul McCartney died in 1966. The classic rock conspiracy, supported by forensic evidence. Paul McCartney is obviously alive. He's 82 years old, still touring, a global icon. This theory is just fans reading too much into lyrics and album covers, right? But here's what made me question reality. The evidence goes beyond backmasking. Forensic facial analysis, comparing verified photos of McCartney before and after late 1966, shows significant structural changes, not aging, but subtle differences in the jaw, nose, and eyes suggesting a different person. Beyond visual forensics, audio analysts have claimed that voice prints of his singing voice show different fundamental frequencies and tonal qualities pre- and post-1966. Handwriting analysis of his signature reveals fundamentally different patterns that graphologists call impossible to reconcile. Then there are the clues the band allegedly hid. The whisper at the end of Strawberry Fields Forever, where John Lennon seems to say, "I buried Paul." The entire concept of the Sgt. Pepper's album was about the Beatles taking on alter egos, a perfect cover. And the Abbey Road cover, which depicts a funeral procession. John, in white, minister, Ringo, in black, undertaker, Paul, barefoot, and out of step, corpse, and George, in denim, gravedigger. The VW Beatles license plate reads LMW 28 if, interpreted as Linda McCartney weeps, and that Paul would have been 28 if he lived. The fall theory also provides an explanation for the Beatles' sudden, dramatic musical evolution after 1966. If you can replace one of the most famous people in the world, who else isn't who they seem? Replacing a celebrity is a shocking idea. But what if a celebrity isn't a replacement, but an asset, engineered to control you? Taylor Swift is a Pentagon psyop. America's sweetheart, a global pop phenomenon, or the Pentagon's most successful psychological operation. She's a talented pop star who writes catchy songs. The idea she's a government asset is absurd. But here's what's genuinely disturbing. Her rise to cultural power coincides perfectly with the military's shift towards soft power and cultural influence operations. The most effective propaganda doesn't feel like propaganda. It feels like entertainment. Her father, Scott Swift, was a top executive at Merrill Lynch, a firm with deep Pentagon contracts and ties to military intelligence. That's not a coincidence, that's access. Her career trajectory defies normal music industry patterns. Her path was unusually smooth, well-funded, and supported by major institutions from the start. She has unprecedented influence over voting patterns, particularly among young women. Her public political statements almost always align with the strategic objectives of the military political establishment. This is a classic soft power projection, a tool used by intelligence agencies to shape foreign cultures. The theory suggests the same techniques are now being deployed domestically to guide the opinions and social behaviors of the next generation. The timing is always too perfect. The most effective propaganda doesn't force you to think something. It entertains you while it subtly changes how you think. If influence operations can be hidden in our culture, what about a secret base hidden on our own soil? Denver Airport is an Illuminati base, the most expensive airport ever built, with a disturbing art collection. It's just an airport with weird art. Sure, the murals are creepy, but artists are provocative. The conspiracies are for people who don't understand civil engineering. But here's what chilled me to the bone. The airport cost $4.8 billion in 1995, $2 billion over budget. That's an extra $4 billion in today's money. Much of that cost went to a massive multi-level underground tunnel system serving no apparent purpose. The official explanation, an automated baggage system, failed and was abandoned, yet the massive tunnels remain. Workers on the project reported seeing vast, completed sections of the underground complex that were inexplicably buried and built over, suggesting the true purpose was hidden even from the people building it. Then there is the art. The apocalyptic murals depict death, disaster, and a gas-masked soldier impaling a dove of peace. There's the 32-foot-tall blue horse statue, Blucifer, with glowing red eyes, which fell on and killed its creator. The runway layout, from above, clearly forms a swastika. Airport officials claim it's for efficiency, but pilots and engineers have disputed this, stating there is no logistical reason for this configuration. Multiple, separate construction crews were hired and fired during construction, each working on small sections without knowing the overall plan. This is a classic compartmentalization technique from top-secret projects. On the airport's dedication stone, you'll find Masonic symbols and a reference to the New World Airport Commission, an organization that doesn't exist. When you build something this expensive, with this much secrecy and strange symbolism, you're not just building an airport. Building a secret base takes time. But what if the conspiracy isn't about hiding something in space, but hiding time itself? The Phantom Time Hypothesis. What if 297 years of history, from 614 to 911 AD, never happened? We have historical records, archaeology, carbon dating, the Dark Ages, Charlemagne's empire. It's all documented. To suggest otherwise is insane, but here's what made my blood run cold. German historian Heribert Illig discovered systematic gaps in the archaeological record for these exact centuries. Charlemagne's empire, supposedly the largest since Rome, has left behind suspiciously little physical evidence, few buildings, few artifacts. Carbon dating from this period shows consistent inconsistencies, suggesting dates were artificially inserted. The motivation? Control. By inventing a historical lineage, including the powerful figure of Charlemagne, Emperor Otto III, and the papacy, could cement their divine right to rule, creating a historical precedent for their authority that was built on a foundation of nothing. The smoking gun is the Gregorian calendar reform of 1582. Pope Gregory XIII claimed the reform was to correct a 10-day drift, but Illig's calculations show the old Julian calendar should have only accumulated that drift over 1,300 years. The math only works if 297 of those years never happened. If you can fake 300 years of our collective history, how much of the past is actually real? If our history can be rewritten, what about your own reality? What if your memories are the next target? The Mandela effect is parallel universe shifts. The phenomenon of millions remembering the same wrong thing. Most people dismiss it. Nelson Mandela died in 2013, not in prison, in the 1980s. The Berenstain Bears was always spelled with an A. It's just mass false memories. But here's what's terrifying. Quantum physicists at CERN admit their Large Hadron Collider could theoretically affect the timeline or open gateways to parallel dimensions. The phenomenon isn't just I remember it differently, it's millions of unrelated people remembering the exact same wrong details. The statistical probability of this is essentially zero. The changes are always small. A movie quote changes by one word, a brand spelling by one letter. CERN's collider began high-energy operations in 2008, exactly when people started reporting these effects en masse. Critics of CERN often point out that we have no baseline for what reality should be like. For all we know, these small shifts are happening constantly. We only notice the ones that conflict with a deeply ingrained cultural memory. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, a leading theory, says every quantum event splits reality into multiple timelines. What if CERN's experiments don't just detect these splits, but cause our consciousness to shift between them? What if these aren't false memories? What if you are remembering a different timeline, one you've been shifted away from? We've looked at drones, lost tapes, and phantom years. But the real question is this: if they could fake just one of these things, what are they faking right now? Look at the screen you're watching this on, the news alert that just popped up, the fact check that will appear below this video. The pattern is always the same: ridicule, dismiss, and attack anyone who asks questions. The most terrifying conspiracy isn't on this list. It's the one that has convinced you to stop asking.